Nikolas Daniel Adegbajumo Omilana was born in the hinge of two worlds. His mother was English, his father Nigerian, and although they divorced when he was young, that fracture shaped the first subtle lines of his psyche. Growing up in Stafford, in the West Midlands, he carried within him both the legacy of his father's roots and the uncertainty of a mixed upbringing. From this tension sprang something curious and later electric, a mind wired for defiance, performance, and a relentless hunger for meaning. As a child, Niko was not merely a boy who watched. He absorbed. He observed. He understood early that people around him did not always mean what they said, and that society was rife with contradictions. In school, he was both light and serious, a prankster in the making, but not oblivious to the bigger games being played. He knew how to use humor, not just to entertain, but to challenge, to probe, to unsettle. The very act of joking was, for him, a way to reclaim control, to layer power beneath laughter. At 13, he created his YouTube channel. This was not a naive teenager playing games. Even then, there was ambition, but ambition cloaked in play. His earliest videos were about FIFA, small sketches, challenges, the kind of content many young creators make for fun. But for Niko, fun was a laboratory. He tested what resonated, what shocked, what could swing public attention. He wasn't just building a following, he was learning how to manipulate reality through performance. He experimented with identity, how far he could push, how serious a joke could become, how real the consequences of prankfulness might feel. The first significant break came later, but the foundation was already there. A man who understood that the world was both absurd and unfair, and that comedy could be a flashlight in dark places. As he matured, his pranks grew more daring. In 2018, he uploaded a video called Undercover as a Racist for 24 Hours, in which he infiltrated an English Defence League protest. This was not mere ridicule, it was a calculated exposure of hate, irony, and hypocrisy. He donned masks of complicity, pretending to align with the protesters, only to extract their worst impulses, then turn their own words against them. He used humor to reflect ugliness, but also to disrupt narratives. That video was more than content. It was social commentary dressed in disguise. In doing so, he revealed a part of his psychology, the impulse toward confrontation cloaked in wit. He didn't just want to prank, he wanted to provoke self-reflection, to unsettle comfortable beliefs. He was not content with being funny. He wanted to challenge power, to point out absurdity and extremism, to reduce serious ideologies to performative theater. And he understood that the stage of YouTube was his platform to do so. But there was a paradox in him, the comedian with political instincts. After going viral a few times, he founded what he called the NDL, the Niko Defence League, both as a joke and a signal. The name riffs on the real-world English Defence League, but Niko used it as an ironic vehicle. Through NDL, he sold merch, expressed satire, and built a brand that blurred lines. The NDL was not just a joke political movement, it was an identity, a statement, a community. It was an example of how he wielded parody not just for laughs, but for collective engagement. In that brand, one sees his dual impulse, to mock power, but also to build a power of his own, even if built from irony. His rise accelerated further when he joined forces with other creators to form the Beta Squad. This collective felt less like a gang of pranksters, and more like a deliberate creative coalition. With Beta Squad, he found peers who understood that content could be profound under the guise of chaos. They moved into a large mansion, created content together, challenged each other, amplified each other. For Niko, this was not just friendship, it was structure. He gravitated toward organized collaboration, even in the wild realm of digital chaos. Through this group, his capacity to plan, manage, and execute ambitious pranks scaled up. He was no longer a solo creator. He was a strategist, a leader, a conductor of a creative orchestra. But public spectacle was not enough. Behind the audacious videos and the satirical politics stood a man who was deeply ambitious, but who did not want power just for show. He wanted to test the system. He ran as an independent candidate in the 2021 London mayoral election. He wasn't naive. He knew he wouldn't win. But the campaign was itself a performance, a provocation, and a research project. He pitched radical ideas. McDonald's turned into social housing, among others, but did so with a smile and a wink. To many, he seemed unserious. Yet some of his pledges, though satirical, were also symbolic critiques of inequality and bureaucratic inertia. He harnessed political infrastructure not just to joke, but to illustrate failure, to mirror absurdity, to to demonstrate that traditional political systems were vulnerable to satire if someone creative enough understood their weaknesses. His run was not a stunt without stakes. He garnered tens of thousands of votes, more than many would-be fringe candidates. For him, the candidacy was less about governing than about performing democracy, showing that the system is permeable, that protests can be entertaining, that political critique can be viral. This is core to his psychology. He doesn't merely want to dismantle power. He wants to wield it in a way that both subverts and entertains. Niko's pranks continued to grow more elaborate, more socially pointed. He didn't shy away from controversy. In fact, he courted it. His videos with far-right provocateurs or his daring stunts at political events showed he was willing to risk reputation, safety, and backlash. But risk was part of his calculus. His childhood, split between nations, cultures, and identities, had taught him to navigate unstable terrain. He was comfortable flirting with danger because risk amplified his message. To him, a prank that barely lands is wasted potential. One that lands hard can shake something real. Yet even with his humor and outward confidence, there was an undercurrent of restlessness. His mixed heritage, his parents' divorce, and his move away from London to Stafford had instilled in him a subtle alienation. He was both British and Nigerian, but neither wholly claimable. He was a comedian, but not just a comedian. He was a political contender, but not conventionally serious. That liminal space between identities, between disciplines, became his fertile ground. In that blur, he found power. In that blur, he built his brand. He didn't have to choose one side. He lived in the ambiguity, and more than that, he monetized it. Over time, his internal conflict, to be a clown and a crusader, matured into something more coherent. He began to see himself not just as an entertainer, but as a provocateur and a social commentator. His pranks were less random, more pointed. His political actions were less naive, more symbolic. He realized that content and activism are not separate. For him, they are one and the same. His humor distracted, but his strategy was serious. One of his most striking traits is his emotional resilience. He deals with rejection, trolling, political criticism, and online backlash with a calm that belies the chaos of his actions. When he runs for office, competitors underestimate him as a joke. When he stirs controversy, critics accuse him of insincerity. But he remains remarkably steady, not because he is immune to criticism, but because he has built his identity on being misunderstood. The misunderstanding is part of his power. People think his pranks are superficial, but underneath, he is always testing power, social structures, and collective beliefs. He uses misunderstanding as camouflage. Another thread in his psychology is his hunger for legacy. He doesn't just want clicks, he wants to be remembered. He does not just want viral moments, he wants to shape ideas. In his mind, humor is not just entertainment, but a vehicle for influence. He understands that virality is fleeting, but ideas can persist. By combining content creation with political performance, he is crafting a legacy that transcends typical YouTuber stunts. He wants more than to be famous. He wants to be influential. His charitable work, too, participating in soccer aid, Sidemen charity matches, is not accidental. Beneath the pranks there is a generosity, a desire to connect, to give back, to leverage his platform for something more than himself. He shows that his public persona is not purely self-serving. He is aware of the responsibility that comes with attention. But even giving is strategic. His philanthropy enhances his credibility, supports his brand, and cements his identity not only as a comedian, but as a public figure with conscience. Yet despite his growing fame and political ambitions, he still seems to revel in impermanence. He loves to destabilize expectations. He leaks campaign promises that are bizarre. He makes stunts that look meaningless. He holds signs and chants slogans that mock the very idea of order. But this is not nihilism. This is a deliberate destabilization. He wants to show that society, politics, and media are performative, that power is not fixed, and that satire can be a form of truth. By doing this, he forces his audience, young, politically aware, social media native, to question what is real, what is serious, and what is just a joke. Deep down, Niko Omilana's psychology is rooted in duality: the pranker and the provocateur, the comedian and the politician, the outsider and the leader, the risk-taker who needs order, the disruptor who craves legacy. He is not content playing one role, nor being taken at face value. He engineers his own narrative through chaos, laughter, and political performance. In doing so, he has created something rare, a persona that is powerful, ambiguous, deeply strategic, and emotionally complex. His journey from a teenager with a YouTube channel to a political personality disrupting traditional structures was not a straight line. It was a series of experiments, risks, reflections, and provocations. And as he continues to evolve, his real power lies not merely in his pranks or votes, but in his capacity to turn satire into social commentary, influence into activism, and performance into legacy.